introduce Consul General Sang Pyo-seo, the Honorable Sang Pyo-seo from the Consulate of the Republic of Korea, for his congratulatory remarks.
Ladies and gentlemen, and distinguished guests, I see some of the Korean compatriots. Good evening. I'm very honored to be invited to this very important event tonight. Since I arrived in Atlanta as Consul General, I was invited to many events and many gatherings. Average ages of the participant guests, they are over 60s, but tonight I see that there are no guest participants over 60s. It's good to see tonight. And I'm very thankful for all of you attending tonight. They say that partnership event. We have a very busy schedule at the end of the year, so sometimes I invite 2 or 3 gatherings at night on one day. But this event is very important, so I decided to attend tonight. And so I was told Executive Director Abraham and staff, the staff of Council of Korean Americans, they made a hard effort to prepare this event, and I see Michael Ba and Sarah Ba, their contribution to this event is very crucial. So I thank all of you. And I met Neil Lewis tonight, head of a new Pew Research Initiative. They say the head of new research initiatives in the Pew Research. Thank you for coming tonight to share your insight on tonight's theme. Tonight's theme, when I got in my version of the program, it says trend, issues, challenge. But I see there a premise and problem and paradox. And here for it. So anyway, I understand that the premise is and policy, but you're gonna because give me what is the paradoxes for the Asian American community here. So tonight I'm very eager to listen to the very renowned speakers tonight. And this year, you know that very special year to the Korean community, 120th anniversary of Korean immigration to the United States, and the 70th anniversary of Korean-US alliance. So, in that 7 years ago, in 1953, thanks to the sacrifices of American soldiers during the Korean War, the Republic of Korea, South Korea, was able to defend its democracy and freedom and make the war ended. Since then, you know that South Korea has achieved economic development and with a very resilient democratic society that Americans, and we are very proud of that. The alliance between the Korea and the US is very diverse, right now has diverse a lot. So from our alliance started from military alliance, right now to economic, expanded to economy and culture. So we see that many Korean companies coming to the United States, and I was surprised to know that in the United States, the Korean culture, K-pop and K-drama have become popular to the US citizen. So now Korean community, Korean Americans, you know, Right now, I found that actually I was in Atlanta 28 years ago. At the time, the Koreans, the profession are not so diverse. But right now, when I met the Koreans, Korean Americans, the job is very diverse one. So we have even that government officials and politicians, even though at the state level in the Georgia, we know that I was told the Sandberg representative of the Georgia House, he would attend this tonight, but I don't see him. Anyway, that also we have Suong. She is also the State House representative, and in the one-up election recently held, John Bach, he was elected as mayor of Brookhaven. So I'm very happy to see that the Korean community in Georgia, they are right now playing a very important role in the U.S. society. So tonight our speakers will talk about that not only in Korean community, I guess but also Asian community in the United States as a whole. Especially in particular, I mentioned the Korean community. Korean community, their role has changed a lot. So the first generation of the Korean immigrants, to them the challenge was the survival in a faraway country from motherland. So they try to survive and settle down to the unknown and foreign countries. But right now, the second generation and third generation of Korean Americans, the challenge is very important. They have all well settled down in the society, and now their challenge is the issues. How can they further contribute to the American society? And now, as the Korean Republic of Korea has intensified bilateral ties with the United States, how the Korean community in the United States, they can use benefit that Korean and the United States very close tie to their job, or to make the Korean society more resilient and to more contribute to the development of U.S. society itself. So right now, Korean Americans here, their promise has been very expanded. I don't know actually what is the paradox, but even though I don't know the paradox, but from our tonight speakers, I can be a little enlightened on that tonight. Thank you for all to coming tonight, and I hope that they will enjoy tonight's event. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much for having us here this evening. My name is Abraham Kim. I'm the Executive Director at the Council of Korean Americans. We're based in Washington, D.C., and for those of you who have not heard about our organization, we are a national organization, a leadership network, representing leaders from all different various kinds of sectors, from the arts and media to corporate to finance, to represent the Korean American community at the national level, to ensure that our voices are heard at the national level, both in the public and private sector, but also to train and develop leaders for the future within our community, as well as making sure these leaders in our community are active partners with other communities of color to ensure that our voices are heard, both in government as well as in industry. And so we're really proud to have an opportunity to partner with important organizations like KAC Atlanta, and I sense the energy of Atlanta and just the Korean American community. And I'm proud to say that there are Korean American communities with this full of enthusiasm in other parts of the country, whether it's Houston, LA, Seattle, Boston, and there are, the Korean American community is reaching new heights in terms of not only its achievements, but also its contribution and active involvement in the broader United States. So we are happy to be here and happy to celebrate this wonderful holiday season with all of you here in Atlanta. Tonight, I am here, I feel like I am the kind of the startup show before Bono and YouTube hits the stage. So I'm going to keep my remarks very brief because of time, but I just wanted to...
Thank you, Abe. And thank you, Michael, and thank you for hosting me here. It's been great to be back here in Atlanta. I remember a while ago I was back here in Atlanta in 2019 when Asian American Advancing Justice had their first kind of this major conference room in Atlanta. And at that time I was trying to raise money for this project that I'm presenting to you today. And the whole point of this project that I've been privileged to be part of at Pew Research Center is really kind of our mission at Pew, which I don't know if everyone knows about Pew Research Center, but we're a public opinion research firm or organization. We're nonprofit, nonpartisan, non-advocacy. But our founding documents say facts, fact-based information is the fuel democracies run on, the raw material from which societies identify problems and formulate solutions. We have, many of you here are leaders, but without the data, without the understanding the voices of the actual people you are serving, you will not understand what to do. What are their challenges? What are their hopes? What are their dreams? And this project really was about helping us understand all of those among the 24 million Asian Americans living in the US. So this project would not have been possible without a lot of funders. This was a multi-million-dollar project that took a lot of effort and a lot of multiple methods in order for Pew Research Center to say it was a nationally representative survey of Asian Americans. And we really went deep in terms of disaggregating the data to really understand all the different origin groups of Asian Americans. So here's a little bit of a roadmap of what I'm going to talk about, but I'll just dive straight in. We heard a little bit from Abe about, Asian Americans are the fastest growing demographic group in the United States, racial ethnic group. You can see here, it grew by 81% from 2000 to 2019, followed by Hispanics, Native Hawaiians, Hispanics, Black, and white. And also, Asian Americans are projected to be about surpass 35 million by 2060. We also know that when you disaggregate the data among Asian Americans, there are many different origin groups. The big six, Chinese, Indian, Filipino, Vietnamese, Korean, and Japanese, make up about 85% of the 24 million Asian Americans. But there are other groups that are 2% or less of the Asian American population, Pakistani, Sri Lankan, Burmese, Nepalese. And what Abe talked about, when you look at data on Asian Americans, if you just have that one data point, Asians overall, you're going to hide the diversity. And we know they have very different languages, very different histories here in the United States, very different cultures, very different religious practices that we won't capture with that one data point. Income, very different and diverse. When you look at, and it reflects kind of the history of immigration into the US. Indian Americans are the highest median household income, about $119,000 per year. Whereas, and this makes sense given that they're selected as H-1B or they're workers or foreign students because of their education or high skills. But then you have other groups, Burmese, Nepalese, Lao, Hmong, those who came to the US because of conflict. They have a very different starting point here in the United States, and it's reflected in even the income. And then education background. Everyone always focuses when you look at the aggregate data, the 54%, they say, well, Asians are doing really well. They all have bachelor's degree and above, right? Majority do. Well, in this aggregated data, the different origin groups, it matters who you look at. Bhutanese, Burmese, Lao, Hmong, much lower, whereas you have Indian, Malaysian, Korean are much higher rates of education having a bachelor's degree or above. Then, when you look at geography, who are the top Asian origin groups? When you talk about Asians in a certain state, who are you most likely talking about? Here in Georgia, the largest group is Indian Americans. I mean, of course, it's very diverse, but with Koreans and everyone else here, but like Indians are the top. But you see in California, Chinese, Filipinos in Nevada, Filipinos in Hawaii, Indians in New Jersey, Hmong in Wisconsin and Minnesota.
All right, Alabama.
And Alabama, there you go, neighboring state, Koreans. So how do we fill this gap, this data, our voices, our views, our opinions at Pew Research Center? As one overall monolithic group, we knew that it's diverse, and we knew that surveying less populous groups are expensive. So how we overcame this was by doing a very comprehensive, inclusive, what we call mixed methods research approach, both survey and a lot of focus groups. We conducted 84 now, 84 focus groups in 18 different languages of 18 different Asian origin groups, moderated by members of their ethnic origin groups. Throughout this took place, 66 of them took place during the heart of that pandemic in 2021. And you can see the diversity of the people we spoke to in these focus groups to really understand what they're going to, and it fed into the survey. We did a survey last year and ended this year. It's the largest national representative survey ever done on Asian Americans, where we had to mail out 268,000 mailings, and this was hard to do with $2 bills. You add that up, that's a really nice condominium, probably in Atlanta, or actually a house, right? To yield 7,006 Asian Americans in the survey. This is probability based. You want to make it chance by chance so that you can make sure that it's accurate to the voices of the populations. And it was conducted in 5 different Asian languages as well as in English. And because it was such a long filter, it was like running our own census. We did it from July of last year all the way through January of 27. There's a lot of postcards, a lot of telling people to answer the survey. So what did it tell us? First off, identity. Asian Americans are telling us, in the first line it says, vast majority say Asians in the US have many different cultures. I mean, this is nothing new, we knew this. 90% of us, we're all diverse, we have different origins. The US adult population, still majority think the same thing, but slightly less. 10 percentage points less. 80% of the general US population think we have different cultures, but 18, almost 20%, think we all share the same culture. Like all Asians are the same. So you have that perception, at least among a lot of US adults. When we did the focus groups, we were asking people, how do you identify? Do you choose to identify with your ethnic origin, Hmong, Burmese, Korean? Do you choose to identify with being just Asian? And we heard a lot of different reactions here. So in the bottom right, we said, quote, Asians is so broad. I'm Cambodian, right? So people say it's too broad to talk about us as Asian. But then you have other people, like here's someone who's Burmese, that quote, most people don't know where Burma is, so I just say I'm Asian. So you get this sentiment that people are just tired, or like, I'll just succumb to being Asian because it's too hard to explain. Well, in the survey, we asked the 7,006 Asian adults, do you prefer to identify and describe yourself most often with your ethnic, like Korean, ethnicity in America, like Korean American, Asian American, Asian American, regional Asian, meaning East Asian, South Asian, or other? We found that just over half use ethnicity, again, Korean, alone or in combination with American. We also found that people also like American, right? So 51% use American in some form, whether it's Korean American, Asian, or American. But the term that's usually used all the time to describe the population, Asian American, just about 28% use Asian or Asian American to describe themselves most often. What's interesting here, we could disaggregate by nativity. So you can see here, place of birth matters. So those who were born abroad, who immigrated to the US, they're most likely to use ethnicity. So you can see here, 56% use they're Korean or Korean American. But then you see that the bottom yellow line, those are those who were born in the United States, like myself as Filipino American or Korean Americans who were born in the US, they're the most likely to use American in some form to identify themselves. Also, place of birth shapes their networks, who they interact with. So you can see here, the first line here, foreign-born, 56% have all or most of their friends are the same ethnicity or Asian. Those are among those who are immigrants. Asian immigrants have mostly friends who are either the same ethnicities or Asian. But US born are more likely to consider themselves a typical American. We asked this question, do you consider yourself a typical American? Those born abroad, 37% say yes, but the US born, 70% say yes, I am a typical American. What's interesting here is that Korean Americans actually, when we disaggregate, are one of the least likely to describe themselves as a typical American, while Japanese adults who have a longer history here in the United States or also have, and have less immigrants now, are the most likely to describe themselves as a typical American. Next is shared experiences of Asian Americans. We asked this question about what happens to Asians in the US. So when something happens, like the unfortunate events that happened here in Atlanta in 2021, what happens to someone who's Asian? Does it affect your own life at least some of the time? We found that 60% of Asians say that. So what happened here in Atlanta, and we know that sparked a lot of national conversations, and it caught a lot of philanthropy, a lot of action, and that sparked with a lot of leaders actually in this room. And we also, Asian Americans tell us that about 70% say having a national leader advancing Asian American community's concerns is extremely or very important. They're telling us we need a national leader to really watch out for Asian Americans' concerns. What we found here is that Korean adults, actually of all the origin groups, are the most likely to say what happens to Asians in the US affects their own lives. They're the most likely to make the connection. And that's probably, again, a lot of youth leaders who are here in this room. Then we also ask about Asian Americans reporting, there's this concept in sociology called street race. How do people describe you? I talked about how Asian Americans want to describe themselves. Well, how does people most likely describe how you look? Right? So 60% say when you pass someone along the street, they'll describe them as Asian, right? And that happens to about 60% of the time. The bottom line here is that about 20% of Asian Americans told us that they had hidden a part of their heritage from non-Asians. That they've hidden deliberately something about themselves from their cultural heritage from non-Asians. It's about 1 in 5. But what's interesting here is that the US born, those who are born in the country, Korean Americans who are born, whose parents immigrated to the US, are the more likely, about a third, 32%, to say they have hidden their heritage from non-Asians. What's interesting here is that the second generation, those who have an immigrant parent, and even disaggregated even more, they're the most likely, about 40% of the second generation Asian Americans say they have hidden a part of their heritage from non-Asians. And we had an open question, why? And people said, embarrassing, bullied, teased, mocked. And I can relate to this, because as a child, growing up Filipino, my parents made me, I don't know if anyone knows chicken adobo, and I remember bringing a rice dish to school as a second grader. And then people made fun of me. So I told the next night, I said, to my parents, give me peanut butter and jelly sandwich. I didn't want that to happen to me. Well, now I know I wasn't alone. There are about 40% of other Asian Americans, the exact same situation myself, who also are choosing to hide something about themselves. Korean Americans are the most likely, which is ironic given that there's K-pop and you're in this revolution around the world of your popularity. A quarter, 1 in 4 Korean Americans say they have hidden a part of their heritage from people who are not Asian. That's more than the other Asian origin groups. Discrimination experiences. I know most of you, especially here in Atlanta, but it happened all across the country, especially fresh from COVID-19 pandemic, we had discrimination experiences. So this is from a previous survey before this big survey. We found that 8 in 10 Asian Americans say violence against them in the United States is increasing. This was done in 2020. And reasons why nearly half this experience an incident tied to their racial ethnic background since the pandemic began. So fear someone might threaten or physically attack them, someone made a remark, go back to your country. So these are things that happen, especially if you all remember, probably very well remember what happened just several years ago. But discrimination against Asian Americans is nothing new. In previous surveys where we asked this question, the majority still say that they have personally experienced discrimination or been treated unfairly because of their race or ethnicity. This is during the pandemic and before the pandemic in February 2019. We asked this question in our survey of 7,006 Asian adults. We asked them, is discrimination a major problem, small problem? Well, majority, 57% say it's still a major problem. And they say 63% said too little attention is being paid to race or racial issues concerning Asians living in the United States. And this is just in the last year when we did this survey. COVID-19. About 1/3 of US Asians know another Asian person. That's 1 out of 3 Asian Americans who have been threatened or attacked since COVID-19. This is particularly interesting when we disaggregate. It's a large majority from East and Southeast Asians compared to South Asians. Of course, because people, how you look, your street race, like I told you earlier, how you look and who you blame, right? And Koreans, you see here, is quite high, 35%. Remember 9/11. And go to this question about, how many Asian adults say they have been held back at a security checkpoint for a secondary screening because of their race or ethnicity. This is, again, the survey was done in the last year. You see that about a third of Indian Americans say this has happened to them. And when we disaggregate even more, South Asians are the most likely. Again, so not just Indian Americans, but anyone from South Asia. And we also notice religious affiliation. Again, we're disaggregating the data and seeing some nuance of what's going on. Those who are most likely to identify, who are affiliated with, who are Muslim, about half have experienced this to them, being screened, secondary screen. So, in this report on discrimination, there are 2 stereotypes that really shape most Asian Americans' experiences with discrimination. The perpetual foreigner idea, as well as being a model minority. So when we asked 17 different questions, those 2 stereotypes came up high. Here's a question, these are a series of questions about, they're telling us that this happened to them in day-to-day encounters with strangers in the US, and you can see that things that's related to being as a foreigner, being treated as a foreigner. So people mispronounce their name, people act as if they don't speak English, people tell them to go back to their home country, or being criticized for speaking a language other than English in public. We also notice, so that's interesting, we have cases of exclusion about being a foreigner and how you're treated, but there's also, some people may say, is this a positive thing, about being treated as a model minority. So 63% of Asian Americans say this has happened to them. So 58% say people assume that you're good at math and science. I know that some people say, that's great, right? So then I'll be, but that's also a lot of focus group people who told us in our focus group saying this is also a double-edged sword. Because if you're good at math and science, then, because you're Asian. But if you're bad at it, there's something wrong with you. Because you are Asian, you're supposed to be good at it. And also this idea that Asian Americans are not a creative thinker. 22% say people have assumed that you're not a creative thinker. This goes with that stereotype of Asian Americans being not creative, following what they're doing, not being able to be entrepreneurial. The term Model minorities is more of an academic term, but just 48.4% of Asian Americans have ever heard of the term. But among those who've heard of it, the just 42% of all, there's no majority here, but 42%, the most answered was thinking it's a bad thing rather than a good thing. And now, talking about race relations here among Asian Americans. We found that the majority, even when you disaggregate the data, of Asian adults who grew up, so we asked US-born Asians, so those who immigrated to the US 1.5 generations, those who were immigrated as children, say when you were growing up, their family talked to them about the challenges they might face because of their race or ethnicity. Well, the majority say never, rarely. Never really have their parents or their family have talked about all these things that you might have faced. So we have also these more positive questions about what it means to be American, right? So I'm going to take you now to a more positive note. When we heard from the focus groups, there was this, again, that perpetual foreigner, that assumption that you're from another country. That question about where are you from, where are you really from? You keep saying I'm from Atlanta, and they say, well, no, where are you really from? They're asking, Korea or Philippines, right? That was frustrating for a lot of people in the focus groups who told us that. What's interesting here is that we now have data to say, to trend with the American general US public. So right here, we did a survey of the general US public, comparing them on values with the Asian American population. Where they're practically identical on what it means to be truly American in the US. Asian Americans, like the general US population, all believe that accepting people with diverse racial and religious backgrounds is the vast majority believe that. They also agree and believe in individual freedoms, respecting the US political institutions and law. Practically identical to the general US public. Also, we asked a series of questions about what is your American dream, what's important to being an American dream. Well, Asian Americans are practically identical to the general US public in terms of having freedom of choice in how to live one life, having a good family, retiring comfortably, having a successful career, owning a home. So Asian Americans are no different, even though we have, you saw, people think you're foreign, we're foreigners, that you're very different, but, well, we're practically identical when it comes to values of what it means to be American. History. 1 in 4 Asian Americans say they're extremely or very informed about history of Asians in the United States. So this could be something that you can see here that where they're learning among those who are informed through the internet and media or family and friends. Not through formal education like K through 12 and just under half for college or university. Again, another data point going back with what we just talked about, the forever foreigner, perpetual foreigner stereotype. Geopolitics and relations with the national homeland. So, great, we have the Consul General, and we have all the, and this anniversary with, between Korea and the United States, this relationship. We asked the questions to all Asian Americans so we can disaggregate their views of where they came from, their ancestral homeland. We found that Asian Americans in general, overall, have favorable views of the US, Japan, South Korea, and Taiwan. The majority, the only exception is China. So we know that, again, going back to the perpetual foreigner idea, that this is actually very similar to the general US public as well in terms of their views on foreign policy or towards these countries. We also asked questions to Asian Americans, would you move back to your ancestral homeland? And about 26% said they would. And among those who said they would want to move back to their homeland of their ancestors, 36% say to be closer to family or friends, 22% say it's lower cost of living, or 9% say more familiar with the culture. Here's a quote from one of our Korean American focus groups of an immigrant woman of Korean origin. She's in her 41, so it's translated from Korean. And she said, quote, it has been more than a decade since I first came to the US, and in the meantime, South Korea has developed a lot. Electronic devices that used to be dominated by Japanese products have now been replaced with Korean products, making me proud to be a Korean. There are many Korean cars, K-pop and Korean food, all have grown a lot. Talking about Korea's rapid growth made me feel proud as a Korean. So Korean American views. So South Korea is very favorable or somewhat favorable, and Korean Americans have a very, very favorable view of South Korea, as well as the United States and Taiwan. And the majority of Korean Americans have an unfavorable view of China, and just slightly, not majority, but unfavorable view with Japan. But that is long history, as many people know, the conflict between South Korea and Japan. Among Korean Americans, when they asked this question about would you move back to Korea, 26% said they would, and among those, it's actually interesting, it's very different, it's for better health care. 24%, about 1 in 4 Korean Americans who said they want to move back to Korea said it's because of better health care, or 22% to be closer to family or friends. So, and I know Abe and I talked about this, there's a lot of great medical tourism going on in Korea. Well, it's working, and Korean Americans really see that. So all this, these are all the various different reports, about 9 of them that we just published since May of this year. We have several more, like about 3 more big publications. One that's coming up on those living in poverty. There's 1 in 10 Asian Americans living in poverty, and we do not have a great understanding of this survey because it's large. We're able to disaggregate and understand the plight of Asian Americans living in poverty. We'll also have another report on immigrant experiences, so just looking at Asian immigrants. So I will end there, but you can see all these reports here on our Pew Research Center website /Asian Americans. But this has been a real privilege to be part of. But now I can really feel confident that we have the voices of the 24 million of us here in the US, and I think there'll be a better understanding of who we are, where we're going, and also our challenges. Thank you.